What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. We are back. It is Thursday, December 22nd. We are getting close to the holidays. So if you celebrate, happy holidays. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend coming up. But we got a lot of football to talk about as well. But before we get into it, finish the intro. My name is Eric. That is my lovely co-host over there, Will. How you doing this morning, man?
Hey man, feeling good. It's real rainy outside today though. Kind
Yeah.
of a bummer.
Yeah, weather's got us down, and that's going to be the theme of this episode, really. The weather's going to have a lot of these guys down. So we're going to try to talk you through it, see if you got to, try to guide you through some difficult sit starts, basically. Also, wanted to make a note because we were talking about it in the last two episodes as far as like our actual playoff matchups. We were slated to potentially play each other in the semifinals. We were going to have the Fantasy Football Busters Bowl. We were looking forward to it, and it's not going to happen now because our league has this thing where the two teams on bye play each other during the bye week to decide who they want to play in the semifinals. And then, of course, Jalen Hurts ends up getting hurt, so I don't have him anymore. So I'm the more favorable matchup, I guess. I got chosen, and now Will and I aren't going to play each other, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I don't know. We might be able to make it both to the championship. Who knows? We're not gonna give up faith yet, but it's not looking great, I will say.
Yeah, I'm definitely not giving up. We're trying our best. I think Will, you have definitely a better shot than I do. I'm playing the best team in the league, and I'm without Jalen Hurts, but we'll see. I'm gonna give it a shot. And that's kind of the first thing that we're going to talk about here. We'll get right into this episode for our week 16 sit starts at the quarterback position. So we do have a few pivotal names dealing with injuries. First of which Jalen Hurts, but you also have guys like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson that aren't going to be playing. Big names that you're going to need to fill in for. Also, we have weather issues and matchup issues that are going to be affecting some other quarterbacks. We'll start with Trevor Lawrence. He's going up against the Jets, who are eighth against the quarterback this Thursday, so today. And the weather there is not looking great. I'm going to pull up the weather report if it'll load. There it is. Um, so the report reads it's going to be cold and wet in East Rutherford for Thursday night football. Temperatures in the 40s, steady rain, and a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind. Just ugly weather, and they expect that this will have an impact on the passing game. So with that being said, I just want your kind of overall thoughts on Trevor Lawrence, how he's been doing, and how you think this week's situation is going to affect him.
Well, it's like we kind of talked about Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. They've just been really, really hot as of late, and Trevor Lawrence has been playing really well, even against some pretty good defenses. Like we had Dallas last week. He hasn't been playing up against super slouches, but
Right.
New York's defense is really good, and with the weather conditions also lumped into that, like you said, it just doesn't really make for a very favorable matchup. And Trevor Lawrence, outside of like the passing game, doesn't really do a whole lot to raise his floor anymore than what he does traditionally as a passer. He can be mobile, but it's not something they've really implemented a whole lot into his play style or into the style of play for the Jaguars. So yeah, not the most favorable of things for Trevor Lawrence this week, even though he has been hot the last few weeks.
Yeah, totally agree. Like you said, matchup plays a big part. The Jets have been fantastic against quarterbacks, wide receivers, the whole thing. Their defense is just great. And if there's going to be steady rain and wind, I'm definitely concerned. Let's do something similar to what we did last week. I'll talk about some other names kind of in his kind of ranking range
Mm-hmm.
right now, and we'll see how far we got to go before.
I'd start Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll start a little bit high. Kirk Cousins, who's taken on the Giants.
Yeah, I'd take Kirk Cousins there.
Pretty easy. That's about what I expected. Dak Prescott in a tough matchup against Philly.
Oh, Dak is ass, man. Dak is ass. You see that clip LaShawn
The
McCoy talking
LaShawn
about him?
McCoy.
Yeah,
He's crazy, bro.
he's so funny.
He's crazy.
But I think I'd still take Dak there in that situation. This should be a competitive game at the very least, even though Jalen Hurts
Yeah.
is out.
Yeah, I think I would do the same. Tom Brady versus Arizona.
Ooh, I'm going Tom Brady just because Arizona's defense is dealing with as many injuries as they're dealing with, especially at the cornerback position. So I'm gonna go Tom
Yeah.
Brady there.
Yep. And it starts to get real close in here. Daniel Jones versus Minnesota.
I, I like Daniel Jones because he has that sneaky rushing floor too. So I'm gonna go Daniel
Yeah.
Jones on that one.
I like that matchup a lot too. He's a guy that we're
Yeah.
going to talk about as kind of a waiver wire fill-in if he's available for you. Aaron Rodgers versus Miami.
Uh, it's really close here, but I think I'm gonna go Trevor Lawrence here.
Okay.
I think I am gonna go Trevor Lawrence here. Miami's defense, even though they aren't the best against passers, I think they're ranked pretty low. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah, I think they're
like
close to the bottom
close to
actually.
the bottom. But I don't know. I like what Jacksonville has going on more than I like what Green Bay has going on in terms of their offense. Like I could see that potentially being a good game for the running backs, but in terms of for the receiving core, I don't really know with Green Bay really.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. That's probably my line as well. The Miami matchup is a good one, but we've seen Aaron Rodgers this year, put up duds in
Yeah.
positive matchups. And so, yeah, I don't expect too much from him. Trevor Lawrence has been too hot to sit at this point once we get to around that range. Um, so that one I wanted to go more in depth on because, like we've said, he has been hot. He's been in a lot of people's starting lineups, so I figured that was good to talk about.
Hell yeah.
Some guys that shouldn't be in your starting lineup anyway, but definitely won't be because of the weather. Deshaun Watson and Andy Dalton. They're going up against each other. Cleveland versus New Orleans. This is going to be the worst weather of the week and maybe of the season. This one reads: There's going to be snow pregame or early game. Temps are going to be in the teens. But those are the least of the concerns. We're talking about 20 to 30 mile an hour sustained winds and gusts up over 40 miles an hour. Deep passes and field goals are going to be very, very difficult. So, this is a matchup that I want to avoid almost entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, all of the players, I guess outside of the running
Yeah.
backs, because they're
Fire up
probably going to
Nick
have to
Chubb.
run the ball.
Fire up
Yeah,
Nick Chubb for sure because he's gonna get at least 20 touches this game, at least.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, quarterbacks, skill position players, kickers, outside of running backs, I'm avoiding at all costs. And then we also have another matchup between the Bills and the Bears. That's going to be a tough weather game. But Josh Allen and Justin Fields, you can't sit them. Obviously, Josh Allen is just too good. Justin Fields is too good of a runner. I think that even if the passing game is affected, he's probably staying in my lineup anyway.
Yeah, and if history speaks towards anything, Josh Allen does not give a fuck about bad weather whatsoever.
Yeah,
He's still throwing piss missiles out there regardless.
it's true. But for the sake of keeping you guys informed, let me read the
Mm-hmm.
weather report for the Buffalo Chicago game as well. It says that it's another ugly weather game here, but the wind is the most impactful issue. Sustained winds around 20 to 25 miles per hour, gusts up to 35. No falling precipitation, but could see some blowing snow. Temperatures around 10 degrees with a feels like temperature of negative 10. It's not quite as windy as Cleveland, but it'll be a struggle to move the ball through the air. Is the summary for that one. So yeah, it's going to be tough out there this weekend.
Sheesh. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be tough out there, but I don't know. We've seen Josh Allen play through some bad conditions, and like you said, Justin Fields too dynamic of a runner even to stop to sit. So I think, like you
Yeah,
said, those are still two guys. Regardless of the weather situation, you're gonna start them.
yeah. So let's talk about some potential waiver wire fill-ins, some guys that could be sitting in your free agency pool that you might need to turn to if you have some of these other guys that we mentioned above. Um, we already talked about Daniel Jones. I really like his matchup against Minnesota. They're 26th ranked against the quarterback. I'm actually probably going to be starting him. I'm in the Jalen Hurts bucket, so I needed somebody to pick up, and he's who I think I'm going to go with. Gardner Minshew is also in this category if you need a direct replacement for Hurts. He's taken on Dallas, who's sixth against the quarterback. Tough matchup. He does have all of his weapons healthy. Dallas Goedert is back now. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. So hopefully that helps. Offensive line obviously is one of the best in the league, so maybe he can make it happen. And then we also mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Clearly, we weren't super high on him. We said that we would start Trevor Lawrence over him by just a hair, but he does have a really, really good matchup in Miami, who is 31st ranked against quarterbacks.
Indeed, word.
Um, Yeah, so just to get your take out of those three guys, Jones, Minshew, Rogers, like I wrote them down in the way that I think that I would probably have them ranked. Do you agree? Or what's your ranking there?
I would agree also. I think Daniel Jones, like I said earlier, he's got that rushing floor that a lot of people don't give him credit for. Like, I think he's averaging somewhere around like 35 rushing yards a game, which is pretty good for a quarterback. And
Yeah.
then Gardner Minshew, even though he hasn't played a lot this season, last year when he stepped in for Jalen Hurts in that, like, I think one game he stepped in, he had a pretty good game. He threw for like 250 yards, two touchdowns. So Gardner
Yeah.
Minshew still a pretty capable quarterback, especially in a good offense like this is. And then yeah, Aaron Rodgers. We just really don't know which Aaron Rodgers is going to show up on Sunday. Even though, like you said, it's a favorable matchup, we don't know who's going to show up. But there is a good ceiling there. It's just we don't know what Aaron Rodgers' floor is anymore. As ridiculous as that sounds, but
Yeah.
I do think this is the correct order for Daniel Jones, Gardner Minshew, and then Aaron Rodgers.
All right, cool. So we're on the same page there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have some names on this list that are very questionable, some names I wouldn't be confident starting at all. But if you're in a super flex league and you had, some of these quarterbacks go down to injury, you have some terrible matchups, weather issues, whatever, last ditch, these guys are some dudes you could think about. Zach Wilson does get a really favorable matchup against Jacksonville. They're 27th against the quarterback. He did have a pretty good game last week, but we also want to keep in mind that he played Detroit, who is legit the worst against quarterbacks. They're 32nd, so allowing the most possible points. So we don't want to double count the matchup. It's going to be something similar. And we also just mentioned Trevor Lawrence is in the same game. They have bad weather. So I'd like to avoid him if you can. But again, if you're fully desperate, he's an option. Kenny Pickett gets Las Vegas. They're 28th against the pass. And Sam Darnold does get those Detroit Lions, who are 32nd against quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I agree. It's like you said, you don't feel super confident starting any of these names, but
It's gross. It's
yeah,
definitely gross.
especially at this stage of the playoffs. But in Superflex, if you just need another quarterback that's going to fill in that spot, not the worst starts in the world, honestly.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the running back position here. We do have some injuries to talk about. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, uh, it happened exactly like we expected. He re-aggravated the ankle injury. They put him on IR. He's shut down for the season.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to have him going forward. And Kenneth Walker, surprisingly questionable and like seems like he might be leaning towards doubtful at this point, which really sucks. He's another guy that I have on that same team in the same league we were talking about. He played on Thursday night last week against San Francisco, and I thought he played pretty well. Looked like himself, didn't look like he was hampered by the injury, but then was limited in the first day of practice this week, and then I think didn't practice the following day. So definitely not trending in the right direction. Something to monitor there, but could be without both of those guys. And then some bad matchups and potentially bad situations. Joe Mixon is atop this list. He gets the matchup with the New England Patriots, who are third against running backs. And also, we just have Samaje Perine, who's starting to get more of a role, or not starting to, but I guess when Joe Mixon went down, he played admirably, performed well. And so he's earned a bigger role. So, what are your thoughts on Joe Mixon?
Yeah, I'm not a super confident Joe Mixon starter this week because he just hasn't been really efficient this entire season. Even last week, he wasn't very good, honestly. It's got me a little bit nervous because he just hasn't been very effective. Now, we've also seen Joe Mixon could pop off for a 55-point game like he did this season. But at the
Yep.
same time, in a matchup like this against New England, who is good against running backs, and it's just I'm not really sure how they're really using Joe Mixon at this stage of the season anymore. I'm not super confident in starting Joe Mixon this week, as unfortunate as that is, and what probably is a lot of people's semifinals. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have Joe Mixon, like you probably don't have better options. I think for the most part, you're going to be starting him and you're just going to have to hope for the best. And I don't think
Yeah.
that that's, terrible. I think he'll be fine. Um, but it's just definitely not the best situation. But let's play another little game here of comparison.
Oh
Why
boy.
won't this come off of my screen? What
Oh
the heck?
boy.
Struggling with some issues. It's fine. We'll work through it. So would you start Najee Harris or Joe Mixon? Najee Harris gets the Las Vegas Raiders, by the way.
I'd start Najee. I think not, especially lately. Najee's been playing pretty well as
Yeah.
of late.
Yeah, he's also been sharing a little bit of the workload with Jalen Warren, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I agree. I think the matchup is really, really good with Vegas. Um, and he's been getting enough of the workload that I'm not really worried about Jalen Warren cutting in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think this one's probably too easy, but maybe. Jarek McKinnon versus Seattle.
Yeah, I'm taking Jarek McKinnon there. He's just
Yeah.
been way too good lately. It's one of those guys that he's just one of those guys that's taken off at the end of the season that people are gonna ride to a championship. I feel like.
Yeah, I think the last 3 weeks he's been RB 16, 1, and 1.
He,
So
he's this
pretty
year's
good.
Rashad Penny, essentially.
Yeah, seems like it. Um, okay, same team. Isaiah Pacheco versus Seattle.
I, as long as he stops fumbling the ball, I'd probably take Isaiah Pacheco. Honestly.
Okay. See, I think that would probably be my line. I think I would probably still ride with Mixon there just because of how involved McKinnon has been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like these teams are going to be passing the ball a lot, Kansas City and Seattle. That's just kind of a gut feeling
No, I
that I
feel
feel like
that.
those offenses will keep up with each other, and so Jerick McKinnon's going to be on the field a little bit more. Is what I'm thinking.
No, I definitely feel that. I don't know. Joe Mixon has not really been good as of late. He's been pretty involved, but he just hasn't been that good. That's the thing that's like throwing me off a little bit. Pacheco has been good. He's just seen some. I'm not gonna say bad luck. It's just growing pains, really.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Um, but the other names that are like below him are some of the guys that are on this list and also have questionable situations. So I think we'll end it there.
yeah,
You would still start Pacheco over Mixon. That was my line
yeah. I'd
where I
say
think I would start Mixon
it's
over
really
him.
close right there, but I think I'd give Pacheco the edge.
Yeah. Okay. The next guy that we have on the list is David Montgomery. He's got a matchup against Buffalo, who's 11th against running backs. Not the worst, but not the best. Um, and we have Khalil Herbert coming back off of IR. I don't. We talked about this in our news and injuries video. We don't necessarily think that Khalil Herbert is going to walk right back into the role that he had prior to the injury, where it was almost a 50-50 split.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's definitely going to heavily favor David Montgomery in terms of touches, but I think it's going to be annoying for David Montgomery owners to have Khalil Herbert like siphoning off some of that work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And don't let ESPN fool you guys. I know we all saw that alert come through. Oh, yeah, Khalil Herbert's coming back and they're planning on going run heavy this week. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't take the bait.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to play the same game again. We'll try to keep it condensed. I won't go too high above. We'll start fairly close. Ezekiel Elliott against Philadelphia.
Ooh, I go Zeke. I go Zeke right
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
I lean the same way. Actually, running back on the other side of that matchup, Miles Sanders versus Dallas.
I go Miles Sanders. I think they're going to lean more on him since they won't have Jalen Hurts this week. I think Jalen Hurts takes a lot away from Miles Sanders. They can't both really thrive at the same time and both get a lot of yards. I think this is Miles Sanders' week.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's actually, I hadn't really considered it that way. I was more looking at the matchup because Dallas is good against running backs, but I think you're right. He's going to be more necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, see, some of these names are weird too. Okay, what about Leonard Fournette versus Arizona?
I'd probably go David Montgomery. I think I go David Montgomery in that instance. Him and Rashad
Yeah,
White are too similar that like I I wouldn't start Rashad White over David Montgomery. So like in that same line of thought, why would I start Leonard Fournette over David Montgomery too?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. Yeah, similar situations where they're going to be splitting, but like you said, Lenny and Rashad White are splitting closer to 50-50, where we think David Montgomery is going to get more of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said, this is going to be a tough weather game, so they're probably going to rely on the run game quite a bit.
Yep.
Um, so okay, I didn't even realize what I was doing to myself. Miles Sanders is the next guy that we have up on this list because we talked about they don't have Jalen Hurts. Minshew's going to be in, so like you said, maybe they'll lean on the run game more. Tough matchup against Dallas, who's third against running backs. You have anything else to add before we get into a little comparison?
Nah, I think it's just going to be one of those. It's going to be a tough game for Miles Sanders, but I think they're going to lean on him a lot this game. Him and Gainwell, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we already kind of talked about the higher range. Some of the rankings on this list again, I'm not sure I agree with, but what about J.K. Dobbins versus Atlanta?
J.K. Dobbins against Atlanta. I kind of like J.K. Dobbins as a start, man. I don't know. I haven't felt confident in that knee, but he's been putting up some really good performances. So,
He really has. Two
yeah.
straight weeks he's looked quite good. Their passing game can't get anything going. They're relying on him. So yeah, he's actually ranked below Miles Sanders on this list, but I'm in the same boat. I would start him over Sanders. Yeah, some of these rankings are weird. DeAndre Swift versus Carolina.
The only thing that would stop me from starting DeAndre Swift is the coaching staff. 'Cause I just don't know what they're doing out there in Detroit whatsoever. So I'd probably go
Yeah,
Miles Sanders just off the fact I know he's going to be on the field.
yeah,
DeAndre Swift, I just have no idea what they're doing over there.
I would too. Yeah, same thing there. Travis Etienne, he gets the New York Jets. They're ninth against the running back, very good defense. And again, this is one of those weather matchups. It's going to be rainy, a little bit windy. So maybe they rely more on the running backs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd probably lean Travis Etienne there in that instance.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the next guy on our list. I was
Oh,
moving on from the Miles Sanders comparisons.
oh.
Yeah,
So
I
just how
agree
do I
though.
feel about Travis Etienne in general?
In general, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like he's going to be pretty involved, especially after last week. He kind of got the nod again. It was like, oh, okay, they're giving him a full workload. I was
Yeah,
nervous a couple weeks before, but just coming off that injury scare, I guess they wanted to take their time. And I think he's a full go this week. So I am pretty confident in Travis Etienne this week,
yeah.
especially if Quinnen Williams doesn't play for the Jets. I know he's kind of in question this week.
True. That's a very good point. Um, yeah, no, I agree with you. And so instead of comparing him to the list, because we would be repeating a lot of names just from like the straight rankings list that I'm looking at,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where would you rank him of the names that we've mentioned in these bad matchups and situations so far? We have Joe Mixon, Montgomery, and Sanders.
Travis probably be towards the top of this, either first or second. I think him and Miles Sanders are in two very similar situations here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I'd probably start him over all of these guys at this
yeah,
point. Um, you got to cross your fingers and hope he gets even more involved in the passing game, um, which he hasn't been super reliable in.
but you,
What you got?
but you would hope that if it's a bad weather situation, maybe they can't go deep. Maybe it's a lot of dump offs, screens, short passes. So maybe this is an Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne sort of Christian Kirk type game where they're working on the inside.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think that that's probably a good call. Weather and matchup in mind because they're gonna have a tough time stretching the field against Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. It's a really tough secondary.
yeah,
And then last on this list, as far as like bad matchups, we got Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson. They're taking on Baltimore, who's fifth ranked against the run. We don't need to go super in depth on these guys. I feel like they're not nearly as high caliber. Like a lot of people aren't relying on these dudes, but Tyler Algier, but both of these guys had good games last week, and so they could have been picked up, or maybe people are thinking about starting them this week. I'm just saying, have a little bit of hesitation. Baltimore's a tough run D.
yeah. Baltimore's a tough run D. These guys split. They're going to be splitting 50-50 for sure now, especially now that Caleb Huntley's gone. And yeah, it's gonna be a weird game. I feel like it's gonna be one of those games.
Yeah. And then I do have another running back to talk about, not because of matchup, but just because of how he's done this season. Alvin Kamara, man. We
Yeah,
keep talking about him. I still don't know how to rank him really. He gets Cleveland this week, who's 30th against the run. It's also that same terrible weather matchup that we talked about where I feel like they're going to have to rely on the run game. I don't know if that's necessarily like a good thing. Cleveland's bad against the run, but if they're going to see it coming, I don't know. I just don't know how to feel about Alvin Kamara at this point in the season. Do you have anything else
yeah.
to say about that?
It's like the Saints forgot how to use Alvin Kamara in like the last couple seasons. It's been really weird,
Yeah.
sort of the downhill trend he's been on. And I don't think it's a talent issue on Alvin Kamara's part. He's just not getting schemed correctly. And like you said, if they can see it coming from a mile away, there's no one else to really, really go to with the ball. Especially when, like you said, this is a bad weather matchup as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the worst weather matchup we've seen in a really long time.
Yeah, so it's just going to be Alvin Kamara just running and falling for 4 or 5 yards of play, maybe, hopefully,
Yeah.
if you're lucky. So I just don't feel super confident in Alvin Kamara this week as well, or just this whole season. It seemed like there was a
Yeah.
stretch where they learned how to use him again, and then they just stopped, and I don't understand it.
So I'll ask you the same question I asked for Travis Etienne. In comparison to the rest of the list that we have here, Mixon, Montgomery, Sanders, Etienne, Algier, Patterson, where would you put Kamara?
He'd probably be middle of the pack for me, somewhere like maybe right before David Montgomery, possibly right after David Montgomery, because it would probably
Yeah.
go ETN, Sanders, and then Montgomery and Kamara would be kind of interchangeable right there. I feel like.
Are you are you that low on Mixon, or are you just forgetting?
Oh, I forgot about Mixon.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
was just
would.
making sure.
Hmm. I'd have Mixon right above Kamara probably. So it would probably go ETN, Sanders, Montgomery, Mixon, Kamara for me in this instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I think I'm a little bit lower on Sanders than you, slightly higher on Mixon than you, but for the most part, I think I agree with that list. And you guys heard all of our takes. We kind of explained broadly how we felt about all these dudes. So
Hmm.
hopefully that was helpful for the running back position. We can also talk about some potential waiver wire fill-ins for these guys. Because Jonathan Taylor went down due to injury, you now have Deion Jackson and Zach Moss kind of stepping into bigger roles. They get the Chargers, who are 29th against running backs. Great matchup there. Who do you prefer between these two?
If I had to pick between the two for this game specifically, I'd probably go Deion Jackson. Just because the Chargers should still be putting up points. Deion Jackson has been more involved in the passing game, especially than Zach Moss. So I'd
Yeah.
probably lean more towards Deion Jackson than Zach Moss. But Zach Moss still a good start, like you said, because they're just not great against running backs at all.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Deion Jackson is just clearly the better running back, the more talented back, definitely the better pass catcher. I think Zach Moss got the lion's share of the workload last week just because he's the bigger, I don't know, just like trust him to run into the pile and hopefully get 3 yards type of guy. Like Deion Jackson's a little bit more dynamic, but maybe you
Mm-hmm.
just trust the big dude when you're up 33-0 and hope that you can run out the clock. Didn't work out for you, Colts. Maybe next time give it to Deion Jackson. Uh,
God damn.
so yeah, we agree there. We also have Jalen Warren. Good matchup against Vegas. They're 28th against running backs. He did see I think 11 carries, and he scored a touchdown in their last matchup. Even sharing with Najee Harris. So I like him there. Josh Kelly, backup for Austin Eckler. He's against Indianapolis. They're 27th ranked against running backs. Austin Eckler is going to play and he should be fine, but he's dealing with a little bit of a shoulder issue. He's been
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it for the past few weeks. And I think you can kind of tell that they're starting to give Josh Kelly more of the workload to kind of take some of that off of Austin Eckler. So I think he's potentially viable. And then if Kenneth Walker were to sit, you got guys like Travis Homer and DJ Dallas against Kansas City, who's 16th against running backs. I don't love either of those guys,
Mm-hmm.
but they're definitely names we should mention.
Yeah, definitely agree there.
Um, yeah, you got a favorite from this list?
Out of everybody on there, Deion Jackson is up there high for me. Joshua Kelly somewhere around there too, especially since
Yeah,
last week he did get a goal line touch as well. So they are giving him meaningful touches too. So Joshua
yeah.
Kelly's probably up there as well. And then like Jalen Warren and then the Seattle situation probably ranks last for me just because who knows with Seattle they lean a lot with running backs and even the game where Travis Homer got the nod, he got the nod, but he didn't really do much with it. So
He's just bad.
yeah,
He's just bad.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that'll do it for running backs. We'll move on to the wide receiver position. This one, we're going to be talking about weather issues again, matchups again, but also some quarterback changes and how that could affect these receivers. We'll start out with Philadelphia, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. They get Dallas, who's actually, their defense has been pretty good, but they're allowing a lot of points to wide receivers. They're 26th ranked in that category. I just want to get your take overall on how you think Minshew is going to affect these receivers.
I think with Minshew at quarterback, I want to say it's a possibility, they take a little bit of a step back, but at the same time, I don't think Gardner Minshew he's not an incompetent quarterback at the very least either. Like he's pretty decent. And even the
Yeah.
last time, like I said, he was out there on the field, he threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. And do I think he could replicate some level of that success against Dallas, who, like you said, their pass defense hasn't been the best whatsoever. They've been bottom half of the league, I think, or at least against receivers. I th- I think it's a slight downgrade, but not by much if there is one.
Yeah.
Especially with
Yeah, I
these
think
two
I'm
that are as
in
talented as they are.
yeah. I think I'm in a similar boat. AJ Brown especially, he's the alpha, he's the go-to guy. I think he's going to get heavily targeted. I'm not too worried about AJ Brown. Obviously, Jalen Hurts was putting up potentially MVP type stats and performance, so it's going to
Hmm.
be a downgrade. But like you said, not a huge hit. Devonta Smith, I think, takes more of a hit, just because he's not the number one, and I
And
think
Dallas Goddard comes back as well.
exactly. That was the next point I was going to make. And yeah, we'll see how involved Dallas Goddard is in his first game back off of injury. But I think that Devonta Smith has been benefiting quite a bit from his absence. So with him back, we'll see how much that impacts things. Um, the next kind of duo here, a couple of teammates, DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown. They get Tampa, who's 19th against the receiver, but they're likely going to be, or not even likely, because I think Colt McCoy is officially ruled out due to
Hmm. He
concussion
is
at this
not
point.
playing.
They got Trace McSorley as their starting quarterback. So yeah, let me get your take on these guys.
Yeah, it's a downgrade. I gotta say, it's definitely a downgrade. Marquise Brown last
Yeah.
week, 4 catches for 19 yards, absolutely lighting it up. It's just, I don't think Trace McSorley is going to be able to get it done. And Tampa Bay's defense, even though they're ranked 19th against receivers, they're still really no slouch. It's going to be a rough game, I feel like, because Tampa Bay's defense is good against the run. James Conner's probably
Yep.
not going to be able to get a whole lot going on the ground, so they're going to have to rely on Trace McSorley to open the field up. And I just don't think he can do it, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. We just talked about Gardner Minshew. I think he's probably one of the best, if not the best, backup in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly, he's probably better than some of the starters that are out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Trace McSorley, not, not that at all. He's really bad. Um, I do I think Marquise Brown is definitely a sit. I don't know that there's many names that you could ask me about that I would say start Marquise Brown over
Over
them.
him, yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, though, is a different story. He's shown throughout his career that it doesn't matter what quarterback is throwing him the ball. He's going to get heavily targeted and he's going to get his. And that's been the case even this season with Colt McCoy. Still a downgrade. I'm not saying that it's the same thing. I'm not confident about it, but you don't really have many better options than DeAndre Hopkins. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's one of those you got to start your studs no matter what the
Yeah.
situation is. There's still a stud regardless, but
Yeah.
it's going to be a rough one for sure.
Agreed. And then we got Michael Pittman taking on the LA Chargers, who are ninth against receivers. So that's a pretty tough matchup. And also, they're switching from Matt Ryan to Nick Foles. Thoughts on that?
I'm getting tired of the Colts, man. I'm so sick of the Colts, dude. But I'm hoping this is a positive change. Maybe Nick Foles is the answer. He can come out there and do some stuff. Michael Pittman throughout this entire season has been someone that this team has gone towards in the passing game. So I don't think the quarterback change is going to get rid of his role. It's tough to have a wide receiver that you put this much draft capital into that you're depending on this week because, again, I'm one of those people that have Michael Pittman in this league. And he's just got a different quarterback throwing it to him every other week. I just don't know what they're
Yeah.
going to do, but I'm hoping Nick Foles is a positive change, or at the very least, if he's bad out there, they're going to put Matt Ryan back in, or I don't know what they're going to do, to be honest with you, but I think Michael Pittman's role won't change. It's just a matter of if the ball gets to him or not.
Yeah. It's really tough to project with him. Yeah, the whole thing is weird because you say that like if Foles plays bad, hopefully Matt Ryan comes back in.
But he's been bad too, but he just throws the ball to Michael Pittman a lot.
Yeah, the team I think has said that their intent is for this quarterback change to last throughout the rest of the season, but they've said that with Ellinger, they said that with Ryan when they put him back in, so we never know what the truth is there. Also, it seems like they did it backwards, man. Like if you were trying to win games, which we weren't sure that they were when they made the switch to Ellinger, we thought that maybe that was a tanking situation. Um, like if you're trying to win games, you'd think you'd start with Matt Ryan. It's not going well. You go to Nick Foles, and then at the end of the season, when all hope is lost,
Go
you
to
go to
Ellinger.
Ellinger to see what you have. They're doing it backwards. It's so strange.
And that's just been the story of the Colts, really.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's facts. And then next up on this list, not a matchup issue because Jacksonville is actually a pretty decent matchup. We got Garrett Wilson. Jacksonville, like I said, 25th against wide receivers, but it's that weather situation that we talked about with Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. Um, it's going to be rainy. It's not going to be super windy, but it definitely could affect the passing game. Garrett Wilson is the clear number one there. I don't think that there's much competition. So I think he's going to get targeted, but like, do you trust Zach Wilson in the rain?
That's tough. That's tough. But Zach Wilson, as we know, very good at handling wet situations. So I think the
You
Wilson.
didn't. You didn't just say that out loud.
I think the Wilson
Oh
the
my
Wilson
god.
connection's gonna be okay in this one. I think so, at the very least.
Yeah, I have a tough time sitting Garrett Wilson in this game. He's just been too good. Like we mentioned this week, even last week, like he seems like he's probably quarterback proof. Um, we just hope that the weather doesn't affect things too much. So yeah, I'm probably going to continue to start him with just slightly lowered expectations. Then we got on the other side of the matchup, same thing. Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, same weather concerns, but also they're going up against the Jets, who are second against wide receivers.
Yeah, not super confident in that matchup, but anything could happen. It's always any given Sunday. But Sauce Gardner has been playing out of his mind this year, especially as of today, getting the Pro Bowl nod. Congrats to him. And then
Yeah,
DJ Reed has been absolutely no slouch whatsoever this season as well. So it's
yeah.
I'm not super confident in either of these guys, especially including the weather.
Yeah, you mentioned it when we were talking about running backs with Travis Etienne that this might be a game that's played closer to the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of Evan Ingram, you see a lot of Travis Etienne. Not that I'm overly confident in those guys either. I think this is just going to be a tough game all around, but maybe Christian Kirk you can throw into that bucket too.
Mm-hmm.
He's a slot guy, so he's probably not going to see a lot of shadow coverage from Sauce or DJ Reed. But Zay Jones, I'm downgrading quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna have another 3 touchdown week this week.
Yeah. And then we don't need to go too in depth, but all of the Saints and Browns receivers, like I've said multiple times throughout this video, this is the worst weather matchup that we've seen in quite some time. So Chris Olave, I guess like Juwan Johnson. I'm not putting those guys in. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Njoku. We'll talk about some more of those tight ends when we get to that position. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I don't want to start any of those guys. You agree?
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm avoiding that whole situation.
Uh, Interesting question. I haven't thought too much about this, but just came to mind. Taysom Hill. Do you think he's more involved in a game script like this?
He absolutely is. He absolutely. This is a
Yeah.
Taysom Hill game if I have ever seen it. Because it's the perfect situation for Alvin Kamara to get a lot of the nod and maybe get some work and possibly have a good game. And it's the one that's going to piss me off because Taysom Hill is going to get like 30 points this week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like that could happen.
Yeah. That's definitely in the realm of possibilities this week. Fuck.
Yeah. So if Taysom Hill is out there, maybe consider scooping him up, especially with all of the tight end issues that I'm about to talk about. Or if you have him already on your team, consider starting him. Potential waiver wire fill-ins at the wide receiver position. We do have some actually pretty decent names this week. Chris Moore, if he's still there, we've been talking him up for a couple weeks now, but he gets the best matchup for wide receivers. Tennessee, they are 32nd in that category. It seems like Brandon Cook's just not going to play for this team anymore,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't expect him to be in. Nico Collins, I still don't think he's practiced, so he's trending down as well. Chris Moore's probably going to be the one again.
Yeah, definitely agree there. I think Brandon Cooks, he's done. I think he's done with this team. He's probably done playing, like you said, just for the Texans as a whole. But
Yeah.
yeah, Chris Moore gets a good nod from me this week. Even though last week he didn't do a ton, he's still in a good spot, in a very good spot.
Yeah, really good usage, still 33% target share. They
Mm-hmm.
just didn't pass the ball much. Marquise Goodwin, I think, is another really good start. They get Kansas City, who's 28th ranked against wide receivers, and also Tyler Lockett is going to be out. He just got hand surgery, so he could be out. We know with the Seahawks, they're super like optimistic
They
about
said
injuries.
possibly a week, didn't they?
Yeah, they said he might be back after this week. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I know that whole narrative has started because Tyler Lockett really hasn't missed a whole lot of games in his career in general, and he was like, I
Yeah,
only want to miss a week, and they're saying, oh,
right.
maybe 1 or 2 weeks. I don't think so, but I don't know. But Marquise
We'll
Goodwin
see.
lined up outside with DK Metcalf, not bad.
Yeah, he's played really well in the opportunities that he's gotten this season. Even last week with both of them on the field,
Hmm.
he produced really well. So I like the matchup. I think the game script is going to be good for throwing the ball quite a bit. I think he might be my favorite wide receiver, like potentially available on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think out of at least out of the three, I'm not going to spoil the last person. I think Marquise Goodwin is up there towards the top.
Yeah. And then yeah, the last guy on here is Jahan Dotson. They're playing San Francisco, who's a good defense, but they're only 20th ranked as far as wide receiver points allowed to the wide receiver position. I don't love starting anybody from the Commanders against the 49ers. But Jahan Dotson played really well last week, got in the end zone. He's played well whenever he's been healthy this season, really. He's scored a lot of touchdowns. He's been putting up a good amount of yards. What are your thoughts overall there?
No, I agree. I think he's put up a lot of yards. He's put up some pretty good performances. He's gotten targeted a lot in this offense, especially after coming back from injury. We didn't know how Taylor Heineke and that chemistry would be, but it's there. And he's proven throughout the season that, yeah, he was worth the first round pick and he is a first round talent. So I do like Jahan Dotson there. I think out
Yeah,
of these three, if I were to put a ranking together, I would probably go Marquise Goodwin, Chris Moore, and then Jahan Dotson, just based on opportunity alone and the fact that those two are operating in sort of that just a bigger role. Because, Jahan Dotson, probably the third option in Washington. Well, second or third in terms of the passing
second or
game. We're
third.
not
Yeah,
really sure between him and Curtis Samuel, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Fully agree with everything you said there. So I think we can move on now to the tight end position, the last position group we have here. Similar thing to the wide receivers, quarterback changes, weather issues, matchups that we have issues with. David Njoku, we mentioned him already in the Saints Browns matchup. Terrible weather. You're not starting him. Plus, they're going up against New Orleans, who's second ranked against the tight end position. I don't think we even really need to discuss that very much.
Yeah, we can leave that one right where it's at. The Tickler's not getting it done this week.
No siree. Then we got Chigo Conquo. He's got a decent matchup against Houston. They're 22nd ranked against the tight end position, but Ryan Tannehill is likely out for the season. It's going to be Malik Willis at quarterback. I think that means you can't start him.
Yeah, I don't think you can really start any wide receiver for the Titans.
Yeah.
Malik Willis, like I said before, has not been it whatsoever.
Yeah, especially in this matchup too against Houston, like they're just going to run Derrick Henry 40 times
Yeah,
and they're going to win the game that way. It's going to I guess Houston has actually been surprisingly decent. So we'll see how they play, but yeah, I'm playing Derrick Henry this week and man, I'm not looking forward to it.
absolutely.
And I didn't mention Traylon Burks in the wide receiver category, but same bucket as Chig. I'm not starting either of them.
Mm-mm.
Evan Ingram. So we've actually talked about him a couple times before we actually got to his name, but they get the Jets. They're 15th ranked against the tight end position. We got the weather issues. It's going to be rainy. How do you feel about him this week? Are you downgrading him? Are you upgrading him? Because we kind of talked about it could be a closer to the line of scrimmage game. What are your thoughts?
I'm actually kind of upgrading him this week, Evan Ingram. I think he's going to have an opportunity to, like I said, see a lot of targets just because I think they're going to be working in that short range of the field. And that's primarily where he's operated this season, him with like Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne. I don't think they're going to be able to air it out super effectively against the Jets. Their outside corners are just way too good, honestly. So, yeah, I think Evan Ingram's going to have an opportunity here this week to actually have a pretty good game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like your analysis, your explanation, I agree with. I still don't think that I'm upgrading him. I think overall, I'm probably giving him a bump down. The matchup, the weather does scare me, and just the
Okay.
over under for the game. Like I think that it's going to be a lower scoring matchup than we've seen the Jaguars have as of late. They've been putting up a ton of points, and I don't think we're going to see that this week.
Okay.
So for that reason, I am downgrading him a little bit. But yeah, I think he's definitely got a good chance to be heavily involved in this one.
That's fair.
And then we can talk about these guys individually, but I've listed them together because it's the same matchup. Dawson Knox, who's been pretty hot as of late, and Cole Kmet. They're playing each other. The weather is going to be bad. I mentioned it. Let me check to make sure. Yeah, this was sustained winds of 20 to 25 miles an hour, gusts of 35, uh, temperatures around 10 degrees, but feels like -10. crazy weather. And then also, both of these teams are actually really, really good against tight ends. Chicago is fourth, and Buffalo is third.
Oof. So pretty decent matchups right there. I'm not really. I don't know. To say I'm not really super confident in either of these guys would be an overstatement. I would think. I think they're both gonna have pretty decent games. They both have pretty decent usage within their offenses. So like Cole Kmet, he's a pretty good target for Justin Fields. Justin Fields doesn't really have a whole lot of other people to throw the ball to out there, really, if we're being honest. Dawson Knox is one of many targets for Josh Allen any given
Yeah.
week. But as we said before, Josh Allen, it doesn't really matter the weather conditions all too much because he's still going to do what he does. He's pretty effective at playing in bad weather. I don't know. I want to say I'm not confident in either of them, but I also think that if you have them at your tight end position, you don't have anyone better that you could start over them. So they're going to have to play. But it's
Yeah.
not the worst setup in the world in terms of situations.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was gonna say. I don't love the situations for these guys. Tough matchups as far as the defenses. The weather's gonna be bad. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game, so I'm not happy about it. But yeah, Dawson Knox, Cole Kmet, like what tight ends do you have that you're more confident in at this point?
Yeah.
There's probably not many. So yeah, I think if you have them, you're probably starting them. I don't know, unless you're also rostering like a Gerald Everett maybe, or I don't know. You like, are there any other names that you think could have been double dipped by these teams that you'd be willing to start over those guys?
Mm, I don't
Trying
know.
to look like
Because I'm in a spot now where I'd probably start both of these guys over like a Mark Andrews at this point in the season. You know,
really
probably
even with the weather and the matchups, you'd still start him over Mark Andrews.
with the
He's
way
got
Mark.
Atlanta this week.
I know, but just the way he's been playing lately, I don't feel even just the way that team has been playing lately. I don't know. Like I at least know
I,
these two guys. They have been at least somewhat. They have been at least somewhat productive in their offenses. They've been doing pretty
they've been
well.
good.
Yeah, they've
Yeah,
been good.
no, I agree.
I just don't know about Mark Andrews. That's how I guess that goes to talk more about my lack of confidence in Mark Andrews more so than my confidence in these two guys.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know that I'm willing to go that far.
Okay.
Uh, we've definitely talked down about Mark Andrews quite a bit as of late. I also saw somebody on Twitter mention that it's quite possible he's still dealing with injury because it seems like his downturn, his like fantasy production downturn, kind of happened at the same time as when he was dealing with what the hip and the shoulder injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that those are still lingering. Who knows? We haven't heard that reported. It was just one source, but that's also a possibility. But anyway, I'm just a little bit more confident in him against the matchup and like trusting how good he is as a talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. So okay, if you're fairly confident in Knox and Komet, uh, Pat Fryermuth, what would you do with him compared to those guys?
Who did the Steelers play this week?
Vegas,
They play
good
Vegas.
matchup,
It's a good matchup. I'd
but
probably
he's
go
coming off
Pat.
of a goose egg.
I don't Tug. I don't know because he is coming
Yeah,
off a goose egg. But Kenny Pickett should be back this week as well, and Kenny Pickett likes Pat. I'd probably go Pat. I go Pat. I know he had a goose egg last week, but I think this is a good week for him and a good opportunity for him to bounce back and have a good week. But I don't know,
yeah.
man. It's this tight end landscape has been really bad this year. That unless you're Travis Kelsey, I'm not really super confident in anybody. You know, or even
Yeah.
Dallas Goddard. Dallas Goddard's played really well this season when he's been on the field too. So, but if,
Yep.
I don't know, man. That's tough. Who would you
Definitely
lean
tough.
towards in that situation?
Probably Pat as well. I feel like this Buffalo Chicago game is going to end with less than 30 total points scored. Could be wrong about that, but if that's the case, I don't want to start any of the receivers.
No, that's fair. That's 100%
So
fair.
that's just kind of what I'm leaning towards. But like we said, the tight end landscape is terrible. I think they're probably Knox and Komet are probably right at the end of that tight end one range. Um, so yeah, it's going to be tough to sit if you have them, but there's I guess a handful of decent options around them. And then lastly, here, the last guy that we have on the list, you mentioned Dallas Goddard. I just want to talk about kind of the range of outcomes that we could see with him because we really don't know if they're going to ramp him up slowly, if they're going to drop him right back into the same workload that he had prior to injury. He's going against a tough Dallas matchup. They're fifth against tight ends, and now he's got Gardner Minshew instead of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, so it's the realm of possibilities is anywhere from he gets 0 points because he barely plays this game, all the way up till he has a really good game. Gardner Minshew trusts him because they have played together on this team for the last 2 years as well. So there is some chemistry there to be had. I kind of wanted to go back. I should have did it before we started, but I kind of wanted to go back to see how Dallas Goddard did the last time that Gardner Minshew started at quarterback for this team, which I might take the time to try to look up right now and see.
Yeah. His role has definitely changed since then. Zach Ertz has left. I think Goddard has just become more of a featured part of this offense this year than he had been in prior years.
Well, apparently, according to an article that was published, Dallas Goddard saying that he will have a great game with Dallas Goddard at quarterback, and that's because to this
With
point,
Dallas Goddard at
I mean
quarterback.
with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. I'm sorry, Dallas Goddard said he'd have a great game. That's because to that point he had the best game of his career with 105 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in the Eagles' 33-18 win over the New York Jets, December 5th, 2021.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So
Uh, yeah.
I don't know if history's gonna repeat itself. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna sit
Yeah.
here and say, oh, he did it last year, so we'll do it again this year. But at the
Yeah.
very least, there is some chemistry there, even when people didn't think there was chemistry there last year. You know?
Right. Yeah. I think even before you told me that stat, which is fairly encouraging, you mentioned his range of outcomes could be from zero, but that's the case with all of these tight ends,
Yeah,
bro. Like they're
literally.
all bad.
Like I
So
said,
I don't
unless your
think,
name is Travis Kelsey, it could
yeah,
be anywhere from a goose egg to a good game.
yeah. So I'm really not too worried about the floor at the tight end position, and I think that his ceiling is higher than damn near anybody else that we've talked about.
Hell yeah, I definitely agree. I think out of everybody on this list, Dallas Goddard, of course, is at the top of this list.
Yeah, by miles.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring up his situation because it is pretty interesting. But yeah, so that'll do it. That was a little bit of a longer video. Thank you for sticking with us. I do hope that this different format that we've been trying out for the Sit Starts is beneficial, that's helpful to you guys. I like the way that it's been going. I think Will kind of agrees, but let us know your thoughts in the comments. Drop them down below. We'd love for you to engage with us. Tell us what you think so we can kind of cater these videos towards you guys. But yeah, Will, you wanna wrap us up here?
Hell yeah. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far in the video, it means you fuck with the vid. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell every time you guys will know we have put out a new video. Make sure you like, comment. That kind of stuff gets us out there in the algorithm. That way we can teach some more people about some fantasy football and we can all have some fun out here. If you guys have any fantasy football related questions, we know it's deep into the season, but there is no paywall, so drop any and all questions you got down in the comments below. We have answered every single question, and we will continue to answer every single question. And make sure you check out the description for our other social media accounts. Be able to find us on Twitter, TikTok, and just find more of our content, fantasy football related or otherwise. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we love you. And hope you guys have a great weekend, and best of luck this week in the playoffs. Peace.
Peace.